My name is Ethan. I'm 28, and I work IT support for a mid-size insurance company crammed into the top floors of the Preston building, a once-grand office tower that's aged like sour milk. Every inch of the place is falling apart. The ceilings leak after it rains, the wallpaper curls like old skin, and the floor tiles feel like they're one stomp away from collapsing into dust. But the worst thing, the absolute worst, is the elevator. You know the kind. Metal doors that wheeze when they open, fluorescent lighting that flickers just enough to make your brain itch, and a smell like warm copper and mildew no matter how often they sanitize it. It's a narrow box with warped mirrors and buttons that stick when you press them. I've ridden that elevator nearly every weekday for 3 years. It's always been awful. But last Thursday, it became something else. Something alive. I'd stayed late, later than usual. The rest of the office had cleared out around 7:30. Most of the lights were turned off. I was alone on the 14th floor, lit only by the cold blue glow of my monitors and the distant hum of forgotten printers. By the time I packed up, it was 11:56 p.m. I remember because the digital clock on the break room coffee machine blinked like it had a heartbeat. I stood by the window for a moment before leaving, just staring out over the sleeping city, wondering how I'd become the kind of person who worked until midnight. Then I grabbed my backpack and walked out into the hallway. The silence hit me like a brick wall. Not just quiet, dead quiet. No humming fluorescence. No distant sirens. Not even the murmur of the city below. Just emptiness. I walked slowly, my footsteps unusually loud on the tile. The air was stale and warm, like the building was holding its breath. I reached the elevator. The metal button was cool under my finger. I pressed it once. The red ring around it flickered to life. And then, from somewhere far below, I heard the elevator begin to stir. The sound it made, God, it wasn't normal. Not mechanical. Not anymore. The groan echoed up the shaft like a dying animal dragging itself toward its prey. Metal grinding against metal. Something heavy being pulled upward, reluctantly. I took a half step back. Ding. The doors opened. Inside, the fluorescent light was already on. That's when I noticed the first wrong thing. The elevator had been coming from below. I know that. I heard it rise. I heard the engine. But when the doors opened, the light inside was already glowing steadily. Which shouldn't happen. The lift only lights up when the doors open. It's always been like that. Annoying when you're waiting and want to see if someone's inside. But now it was ready. Lit. Waiting. And in the very back, near the mirrored panel, something moved. Just a flicker. A shifting darkness. I blinked, squinted, nothing. Empty cabin. But I felt it, the sense you get when someone's standing behind you. That pressure on the back of your neck. That primal voice in your skull that whispers. Don't go in. I went in anyway. The doors closed behind me with a soft metallic thud. And that's when the real nightmare began. The moment the elevator doors sealed shut behind me, I felt it. That pressure. Not like claustrophobia. I'd never had that. I used to spend hours in server rooms the size of closets without a second thought. This was different. The air changed. It became still, yes, but more than that, alert. Like the walls were watching. Like the space was no longer just space. I shifted uneasily, glanced at the mirror in the back. My own reflection stared back. Tired, pale, eyes wide. I reached out and pressed G, ground floor. The button gave a satisfying click, but the light didn't turn on. I pressed it again. Harder. Then 2 more buttons, B2. Nothing lit up. Then, without warning, the elevator shuddered. It started moving. Not down. Up. The panel, which had remained dark, suddenly flickered to life and began counting. 15. That made me pause. The building had only 14 floors. 16. My hand hovered over the buttons again. I stabbed at them repeatedly, fast, like a child mashing buttons on a broken toy. Still nothing. No response. Just a steady, upward hum of motion. 17. The air grew colder. Something about the motion felt unnatural. Like the elevator wasn't rising through a building, but through something else. Something deeper. Older. My ears popped, as if we'd passed through a pressure boundary. I felt a static prickle run down the back of my neck, and suddenly, the lights snapped off. Total darkness. No panel. No overhead. No four lights. Just blackness, so complete it felt like being erased. And then I heard it. Breathing. Wet. Gurgling. Ragged. Not mechanical. Not mine. I froze, my hand still extended toward the buttons. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare think. The breathing grew louder. Closer. Right beside my ear. And still I couldn't see, but I could feel it. Hot, damp breath brushing my skin. The faint pressure of presence. Whatever it wasn't human. Or if it had once been, it wasn't anymore. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Just breathing. Then a new sound, a quiet click above me. The emergency light flickered on. I turned. No one. I was alone. At least, that's what the cabin wanted me to think. I looked toward the mirrored wall again. The fog had returned. But this time, it wasn't from me. The mirror was covered in condensation. Thick. Heavy. And in the center, words appeared, slowly, deliberately, as if drawn by a fingertip from the inside. 16th is not your floor. But now you belong here. My mouth went dry. My heart slammed against my ribs like it wanted to escape my chest. I backed away from the mirror, toward the panel, and pressed G again. Then every other button. All of them. Suddenly, the panel went dark. Then flickered again. One word replaced the numbers. Stay. That was when I realized. The elevator wasn't taking me somewhere. It was keeping me. The elevator came to a sudden halt. No sound. No ding. No cheerful mechanical chime to announce arrival. Just a sickening lurch, like the cables had gone slack and something had caught the cabin at the last possible second. I stood perfectly still. The emergency light above me flickered once. Twice. Then, with a hiss of metal and a groan that sounded almost like a sigh, the door slid open. I stared out into a hallway and immediately wished I hadn't. It wasn't my lobby. It wasn't any floor of the Preston building I'd ever seen. This hallway, it felt wrong. Not decrepit like the rest of the building, but sick, like it had been left to rot for decades, untouched by time and yet devoured by it. The walls were a pale yellow, not painted, but stained like skin after a long illness. The wallpaper peeled in thick, wet curls. The carpet, if that's what it had once been, squelched faintly underfoot, spotted with dark patches that might have once been wine or coffee or blood. The ceiling was far too low. I'm 6 feet tall, and I had to duck just to step out. And the lights, they flickered, not randomly, but in sequence like something was walking just ahead of them, triggering each bulb in turn. But the hallway was empty. I shouldn't have stepped forward, but I did. The moment my foot hit the hallway floor, I felt the difference. It wasn't just a physical shift. It was like stepping through a membrane. The air thickened, heavier, warmer. Behind me, the elevator remained open, wide and still and waiting, like a mouth that had swallowed but hadn't yet decided to chew. I turned, half expecting it to vanish. But it didn't. Instead, something far worse happened. The button panel inside the elevator, once lit with flickering reds and faded numbers, had gone completely blank. All except one symbol now burned red. -1, a floor that didn't exist, or maybe one that always had. I looked back down the hallway. It stretched too far. I couldn't see the end, even though I should have. The perspective was warped, the walls bowed inward. The overhead bulbs buzzed like dying insects. And then I saw it, a shape, far down, silhouetted at the edge of where the light began to fail. Someone standing still. Facing the wall, just standing there. I couldn't tell if it was a man or woman, but I could hear something, a whisper, not words exactly, more like mouth sounds, wet syllables, the clicking of a dry tongue against dry teeth. I called out before I could stop myself. "Hello." No response. I took one step forward, then another. The whispering grew louder, more frantic, and just as I got close enough to see what they were wearing, they turned. It was me. My own face, my own eyes, but wrong. The skin was stretched thin and too pale, as if it had been left under fluorescent light too long. The lips moved constantly, even though no sound came out. He raised one hand, and in a voice that wasn't a voice, like my own voice filtered through water through metal, he said, "You've been here before. You just forgot." Then he turned away again, pressed his forehead to the wall, and resumed whispering. Same rhythm, same sounds, as if nothing had ever happened. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, vision tunneling. I turned and ran. The elevator door was still open, but it felt farther away than it had been. My legs felt heavy. The hallway stretched. The air dragged against me like syrup. But I made it, just as the lights began to go out behind me, one by one, in reverse. I flung myself into the elevator. The doors began to close. I didn't press anything. I just stood there, staring at my reflection in the mirror, and watching, just before the doors sealed shut, as another version of me stood silently at the hallway's edge, watching me leave. The doors sealed shut. Silence followed. No movement, no rumble of cables, no hum of descent. Just me, my shallow breath, and the sharp tang of old metal filling the air like rusted blood. I reached out and touched the panel again. All the buttons were dead, except one. -1. It wasn't just glowing now. It was pulsing, like it was breathing. I didn't press it. I didn't have to, because the elevator began to move, all on its own. It shuddered once, then started descending. Slowly, painfully slow. The walls creaked. The light above me flickered erratically, casting long, broken shadows across the mirrored wall behind me. And then I noticed something in the mirror. At first, I thought it was just my reflection, but it didn't move when I did. It watched, and it smiled. The descent took far too long. More than a minute. 2, 3. There are only 14 floors in the building. I shouldn't have gone lower than the lobby. There shouldn't be a lower. But I felt it. With every inch downward, the pressure in my ears grew. My stomach turned. The metal box around me began to moan as if it were bending under pressure. Then came the cold. Not normal cold, not winter chill. This was the kind of cold that smelled of mildew, dust, and rot. It settled in your bones. It made you shiver inside your muscles. And then the elevator stopped. Another jolt. Another silence. The emergency light went red. The doors hissed open. It looked like my office. At first, same cubicles, same cracked linoleum floor, same dirty gray carpet, but off. Wrong. The lights overhead buzzed, but gave off no warmth. Papers lay scattered across desks, untouched for years. Everything was thick with dust, like this space had been sealed for decades. I stepped out, heart hammering against my ribs. Every surface was coated in fine gray powder. Not just dust, ash. The smell hit me then. Burnt plastic, scorched cables, and underneath it all, the unmistakable odor of something long dead. I moved past the first desk. The nameplate read, Ethan M., IT support. That was me, but I'd never seen this desk before. Pinned beside the monitor was a photo. A smiling face. Mine. Younger. Happier. But the frame was black. The corners worn. And in the bottom right corner, written in sharp marker, in memory of Ethan M., missing since 2017. My knees nearly buckled. That couldn't be right. I hadn't even started at this company in 2017. I turned to leave, but something on the floor caught my eye. A pile of lanyards. Old office badges. I knelt slowly, hard on my throat. Each one had my name. Ethan. Ethan M. E. Michaels. Dozens of them. And every single one had a different photo, different versions of me. Shorter hair. Glasses. A beard. Clean shaven. But one thing was the same. Every badge had a black line drawn through the date. And on the back of each one, rejected. My mouth went dry. I backed away. Stepped on something. It cracked underfoot. A cell phone. My cell phone. Same lock screen. Same case. But when I picked it up, the screen flickered and went black. And in its reflection, someone was standing behind me. I turned. No one. But I heard the whisper again. That awful, slick sound. Right by my ear. Each version gets closer. The lights blinked out. I was swallowed by darkness. And somewhere in the pitch-black hall, I heard the sound of 100 bare feet moving across ash. Coming closer. The darkness lasted only seconds, but they felt like lifetimes. When the emergency lights flickered back on, I wasn't alone. The room around me had shifted. Walls sagged like they were made of fabric, draped over something rotten beneath. The air was thick with dust and a faint metallic scent, like dried blood. Across the far wall, A flickering screen illuminated a figure. Someone, or something, sat motionless, staring straight at me. The shape was blurry at first, like a reflection in disturbed water. Then it sharpened. It was me, but broken. Hollow eyes that didn't see, lips moving without sound. The screen crackled. Static hissed and burbled. I blinked. The figure raised a hand, slowly, as if trapped beneath invisible water. Then it whispered, words that weren't words, like an echo bouncing through a cave. "You're next." The air vibrated, and the ash under my feet shifted. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shadow peeled itself from the wall, a faint outline shaped like a person, or maybe a memory of one. It crawled toward me, limbs jerking in impossible angles. The walls seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. I didn't want to move, but I had to. I stepped back inside. Once the doors shut, the panel lit up. All buttons were unresponsive, except for one. G. The ground floor. I pressed it. The elevator began its slow, grinding ascent. I closed my eyes, wishing, hoping to wake from the nightmare. But the elevator wasn't taking me back to reality. It was taking me deeper into myself. The elevator moved upward, but the weight of what I had seen dragged heavy on my chest. I tried to focus on the panel, the cold metal buttons, but they didn't respond, except for the glowing G that beckoned like a fading promise. I gripped the railing, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror. It wasn't quite right. My eyes looked tired, too hollow. The faintest flicker passed across the glass, a shadow, or maybe another me. I swallowed hard and shut my eyes. When I opened them, the elevator stopped. The doors slid open slowly. The hallway was pitch black. No light, no sign of the yellow wallpaper corridor I'd seen before. I stepped out cautiously. My footsteps echoed loudly, swallowed by the silence. Suddenly, dozens of faces appeared on the walls. Not photographs, but reflections. Faces pressed flat against the glass-like surface. Some smiled. Others cried. All of them whispered, "My name. Ethan. Ethan. Ethan." I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. Frozen, I reached out to touch one face, cold like frostbite. Then a hand grabbed mine. It was cold. Too cold. And it wasn't mine. I turned. A figure stood before me, tall, thin, impossibly pale. Its eyes were empty sockets. Its mouth twisted in a grin. And it whispered, "You never left." The pale figure's grin widened impossibly, stretching beyond human limits. I tried to pull away, but my hand was locked in its icy grasp. The walls rippled like water, faces dissolving into smoke. My reflection in the elevator mirror twisted, warped, and then spoke, not with words, with memories, flashes of moments I never lived, walking down endless corridors, sitting alone in empty offices, watching my own face fade from photos on desks. And then the figure whispered, chilling me to the core, "You are the echo, the shadow of yourself, the one who forgot." Suddenly, the elevator shuddered violently. The lights blinked off, and when they came back on, I was back on the 14th floor, or at least what looked like it. I ran through the empty office maze, heart pounding, but everywhere I looked I saw them. Other Ethans, faded, broken, lost, whispering the same words. "You never left." The pale figure's grip was icy, squeezing my hand like a vice. I wanted to pull away, but my limbs felt like stone. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. It smiled wider, revealing cracked, colorless teeth. "You," it said, "are what you've been." My reflection in the elevator mirror twisted behind me, no longer mimicking, but mocking me. It smiled cruelly, eyes black pits that sucked light. Suddenly, the elevator jolted violently. The lights flickered, and the walls rippled like water disturbed by a stone. I was falling, or maybe sinking. Time stretched and warped. Memories surfaced, flashes of other lives, other Ethans trapped in this endless loop. I saw myself aging rapidly, faces changing, jobs lost, friends forgotten. Then a whisper, soft but urgent. "You're caught between floors, between times." The elevator stopped. Doors slid open. This time I saw myself, standing just outside, watching, waiting. Another Ethan, or maybe the one who never escaped. He beckoned, and I stepped forward. I stepped through the elevator doors into a place that felt less like a floor and more like a memory decayed beyond recognition. This other office wasn't just abandoned. It was a mausoleum of forgotten versions of myself. Desks were scattered with broken keyboards, rusted coffee mugs, and brittle papers yellowed by time. The air was thick with dust, yet it hung heavy with an unplaceable sadness. I walked slowly, heart pounding. On the far wall hung a bulletin board plastered with dozens of photographs. Each one was me. Different faces, different ages. Some smiled. Some screamed silently. Some looked lost. And beneath each photo, a date, all crossed out with thick black lines. The whispered voice returned. "You are the sum of all your forgotten selves," it said. "The elevator doesn't move through floors. It moves through time, memory, fear." I realized then I wasn't trapped in a building. I was trapped in my own past. Every time I rode that lift, I slipped further from the present. The elevator was a cage, a prison built from pieces of my fading identity. And the person who had stared at me in the hallway, that ghostly version of myself, was the only one who remembered. The elevator doors shut behind me with a finality that felt like a tomb ceiling. I stood alone in the dim light, staring at the button panel. Every button except one was dark. Only -1 glowed, pulsing softly, beckoning like a heartbeat. I pressed it. The cabin shuddered and began to descend once more. But this time it wasn't the slow, painful crawl from before. It dropped swiftly, as if racing against time itself. As the elevator fell, my mind swirled with memories, faces of past Ethans, moments I never lived but somehow remembered. I realized the elevator was pulling me deeper, forcing me to confront every forgotten part of myself. The breath beside me returned, wet, slow, and heavy. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a whisper. "Help me." The voice was mine, and it was a plea. The elevator slowed. The panel flickered. The doors slid open. But instead of the lobby or any familiar place, I found myself back at the hallway, the one bathed in that sickly yellow light. It stretched endlessly. The figure stood at the far end. Me, or what was left of me. He smiled sadly. "You will ride again," he whispered. "No one ever leaves." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The elevator doors closed behind me. I was trapped, forever caught between floors, between times, between versions of myself. The lift's buttons lit once more. Only one option: stay. And as the doors shut, I felt the cold breath on my neck again. I realized the terrible truth. The elevator was never broken. It was never meant to take me anywhere. It was meant to keep me, the only one still trying to escape.